Can you beat Skate 3 without skating? Yeah, we're trying this. Back in 2019, YouTuber Cypherus uploaded this video where he details his attempts to beat Skate 3 without doing an ollie. And it was at that point I had the wonderful idea to consider taking things a step further and seeing if I could maybe try to complete Skate 3 without even skateboarding. I don't know, I just wanted to recreate the experience of being the one kid who doesn't know how to skateboard but wants to hang out with all the kids who do know how to skateboard. Real. And yeah, I started working on this all the way back in 2019, and there's definitely some big roadblocks that have come up that we've had to figure out how to overcome, and then I also might have originally forgotten about the project for a year, but oh boy was this a journey. But before we can look back at the start of this challenge, we do have to go over a couple of rules and exceptions, because if we didn't have any exceptions in place, then there wouldn't be a video. We would just be done as soon as you started up the game. So yeah, rule 1, the tutorial does not count at all. Rule 2 is the game is considered completed once you've reached 1 million boards sold or completion of the 6th milestone in the game. This is what speedrunners use for their completions, and this is also what Cypherus used for his no ollie run. Okay, and then rule 3, while you might think this makes it way too easy, it definitely doesn't. There is no skating allowed, and this is defined specifically by being on your board and having all of the wheels moving and also be moving at the same time. There's only a few small exceptions, like if I'm locked into an animation, as long as I immediately get off the board the second I can, that's okay. Standing on the board is okay. Landing a trick, as long as I'm not skating around, is okay. And trust me, that one gets really tricky later on. And grinding and board sliding does not count as skateboarding, because technically you're not skating, you're grinding. It's slightly different. And even then, seriously, this is one of the hardest challenges we've ever done on this channel, and we've done a lot of crazy things. With that being said, we can actually go and look at the beginning of this challenge, and mind you, half of this video was done on one account that I used literally just to test the viability and possibility of this being a thing, and once I made enough progress, then I had another account which I used to record a lot of the footage for this video. So just, you might occasionally see some discrepancies in how my character looks or like what the profile name is. That's just because I literally tested this thing out twice. So first things first, we had to make a cool looking character. We kind of had to skip past the tutorial, and then we get to a cool old follow mission, which is where I just ran on foot. You have to follow this guy and stay within 300 feet of him. It's actually kind of hard to stay within this 300-foot radius. However, if you know the route or you generally know where he's gonna go, you can keep up. So it just took me a couple of tries. So hey, one challenge done already, and we didn't even have to ride the skateboard, though technically this still counts as the tutorial. Though just to be safe, I was practicing these ones as if it was the real challenge, just to get a feel for it. For the get your trick on part, I actually tricked off the banked ledge by doing a foot plant and landing it without skating. And then on This Is How We Do It, we had to trick off the first ledge and then grind this other ledge. And I actually ended up landing a grind while doing a foot plant, which was cool. Then we had to stay within 150 feet of Shingo, and that was a little bit tough, but I was able to keep up with it. And then we get to moving on up, which is where they teach you how to use session markers and you have to like move dumpsters around and stuff. And this is where we ran into the first real challenge of what we're gonna have to face with Skate 3. But essentially, to progress here, you have to get air over the dumpster, and the only way it registers you actually getting air, despite whatever you do in the process, is you have to pop an ollie right at the beginning for it to register. So I ended up doing this running and jumping thing where I'm on the board for a split second and then pop the ollie. It looks a lot more questionable than it actually is when you pull off the trick itself, because you're not really skating, but it just looks sus. But fortunately enough, for this section, it's still in the tutorial, so even if this is one of the more debatable issues, we can let this one slide and focus on the actual challenge, because right after you do this and you set up the park editor stuff, where all I had to do was put a ramp down, grind the rail by running and foot planting, the real challenge began moving into the game. And in the first stage, it's really not that challenging just yet. First, we're doing the first Thrasher photo where I had to do a trick into the bank, and essentially I just foot planted a landing when I had a running start. And by this point, we had 7,500 boards sold out of 1 million. So you know we're getting close. Actually, for a quick progress explanation, the way this game works is you start off by just getting small amounts of boards when you're doing these challenges towards your goal of 1 million. And then as you progress in the milestones that are set up, you end up getting more boards exponentially as the later game challenges give you significantly more boards. So while 7,500 doesn't sound like a lot, it's really all about getting through the 6 milestones to get the game completion. Next, I did the first TSM photo, which is where I had to grind the PCU sign, which doesn't count because the wheels don't roll, so I just kind of ran and slid onto my board. I love the little billboard photo challenges because they're literally the easiest way to get boards. You just place the camera and just stand there and you pretty much get boards just very easily. I had to pick a team name and I didn't know what to do, so for whatever reason, Luke suggested Wet Boys, and we just went that because we got that drip. Oof. That was bad. At this point, I really didn't want to try to overly dive headfirst into some of the hardest challenges. I just wanted to see how close we could get to completing all of the milestones first. So the Hall of Meat was the main way that we jumped into things because that probably involves the least amount of skateboarding. The first Hall of Meat challenge is super easy. There's no expectation of you riding a skateboard, so it's just a matter of yeeting yourself off of buildings and trying to injure yourself as much as possible. Balcony bailing also wasn't too bad. I just jumped off the balcony a lot. After these 2 levels were completed, it then unlocked 17 total challenges that are available in Hall of Meat that we could progress through. Surprisingly enough, a lot of these weren't actually that bad. It was just a matter of throwing myself the right way and doing the challenges in kind of this side meta that Hall of Meat really is. Spilled Meat was a little bit confusing, but eventually we ended up finding a route that ended up working to make sure I was able to complete it without riding on the skateboard. And then Thorax Crunch in general is the hardest Hall of Meat map, I feel like, just because there's a long list of challenges that you have to complete. But eventually I was able to pull this one off, and that was a big check mark through the Hall of Meat list. However, there were a couple that I believe are completely impossible to do because they require you to actually skate on your skateboard. Like Going Gone is impossible because it wants you to skate through this thing. Man Overboard wants you to skate down this ramp and then launch yourself into this hole over here, which is really frustrating because you can launch yourself into the hole without skating by just like jumping off here and gliding over, but it doesn't register unless you're bailing off of your skateboard off of the ramp. So there's nothing I can really do to complete Man Overboard. And then on Meat Shoot, they want you to gap into the pipe and they want you to get this riding start with your skateboard, which once again breaks the rules of this challenge. So unfortunately for challenges like these ones where they require the skateboarding to be explicit skateboarding, they're going to be impossible. So we're going to have to just hope that we can still reach 1 million boards sold without having these challenges completed. But at the very least, getting through the ones that I could complete did get us past the second milestone, which meant, hey, at least we're getting somewhere. At this point though, we're still really far away from getting even remotely close to 1 million boards sold. So we're going to have to try to find other challenges that we can do to possibly also progress through this. I decided to try the film challenge, easy as 1, 2, 3. It's not easy at all. Essentially, it wants you to grind down the first stairs, then do a trick down the second stairs, and then grind the planter. Now, getting the grind on the first stairs isn't too hard, but to get the game to register that I'm doing a trick off of the second jump without actually riding my skateboard and doing an ollie is really inconsistent and practically impossible. I had no idea what I would even try for a long time, and I just ran around just trying to think of something for a really long time. I eventually realized if I set a marker and then ran like this and then hit this grind just the right way and landed into a foot plant, sometimes it would register. So then I had to make sure that I was doing all 3 tricks where I had to hit the planter, the middle, and the top in one go without messing up. And that was really challenging. This took way too long, but eventually I did complete the film challenge. Now, fortunately, some of the other film challenges aren't quite as hard. There's a couple I couldn't do though. Do It in the Dark is DLC, and DLC is not a part of the 1 million boards in the speedrunning community, so we can't count this one. Gaps of Solitude, I have no idea what I'm going to do here unless I ollie, and I'm pretty sure Rail of the Roof is just straight up impossible. On Very Metal, I was able to do some foot plant landing along with some grinding, which surprisingly ended up working. And as far as some of the other film challenges, it was kind of hit or miss on what it actually would count and let me do, and then there's just some that were just clearly not meant meant for this challenge. Owned the spot, I had 2 to start out with, which were Aletown Alley and the 9th Dimension, and both of these weren't too difficult, but they did take me quite a few tries to come up with a strategy to pull this off without actually skating on the board. And I'm pretty sure once I hit another milestone, more Own the Spots do show up, so we'd be back to do more of those later on. I actually found the pro challenges to be a little bit interesting, where you have to do stuff with the professionals and you get to skate around with them. Like for instance, Rob Daredeck, you have to keep within 150 feet of him, which actually was pretty bad. Chris Haslam was a little bit harder, as you have to stay within 120 feet and it picks up speed and he just is really fast. Wasn't impossible, but it took a few tries. I had to kind of memorize the route and then try to cut him off where I could. And during this time, I also realized that there's this weird strategy or meta when it comes to running on foot, where if you jump, while it does slow you down significantly, it resets your sprint meter so then you can sprint again. So by timing out my sprints, I can actually occasionally get a burst of speed right at the right moment to keep me within the range. And this is something that becomes a really big factor later on. While this last one was a little bit harder, Mike Carroll, who was after Chris Haslam, was really easy. He kind of wasn't very good at skateboarding. Also, somewhere along the way, we hit milestone 3. I kind of missed it, but yeah, we were making a little bit of progress here. But oh boy, do we still have a lot of boards to go. I did find out that doing the team ads are some of the hilarious, easy way to pick up boards. You literally just stand around and do pictures. I don't even know why they put these in the game, but hey, they got us boards. Also, I did attempt some of the photo challenges and they're not very easy. I had to air or grind over the hip, which I'm pretty sure is impossible, or I had to make it over this gap, which also I think is impossible without skateboarding. With enough trial, error, patience, and a lot of strategizing, you can complete the Own the Lots, or at least some of the Own the Lots, which can get you a big chunk of skateboards. Sure, some of them are much easier than others, and some of them have some really tricky things you have to get real creative with, but I was able to get through this. Just the worst part about this is when you're trying to set up something and you're on a timer, and then just a bunch of NPCs start spawning in. It's really ridiculous. I don't know why the game only spawns NPCs in the area that you're trying to do things in constantly, but it's really annoying. Actually, the whole team dynamic in this game is a little interesting because in some of the more competitive challenges, especially later on in the game, sometimes your team can just completely carry you and let you win, even if you're just a big ol' anchor, slowing everything down, keeping everyone down, doing what you have to do. This actually happened in one of the death races because honestly, when you're running downhill compared to a bunch of people on skateboards, it's really hard to try to keep up. And there was luck falling into my favor with Deadly Ditch, where it's a 6-person race, and I tried on foot the best I could, but fortunately enough, I just did it enough times until randomly my teammates got 1st and 2nd place, and we won and got those boards. I do think it's really funny that because of the fact that the team elements play a role in some of these later challenges, that I can kind of just slack off and be the anchor of the team, just keeping us down, and my NPC AI teammates can carry and potentially win. I just had to roll the RNG dice enough times and there we were. Death races are a little bit interesting. Faster than water is definitely impossible, I'm pretty sure, on foot. Campus Cruiser was one that I tried for so long, spent so much time on this one, and honestly, it was looking impossible. I would lose by like 2 minutes on the race, and there's nothing you can really do to outrun them in a normal way. And at this point, I was actually running into a very short list of challenges I had left. I had to kind of progress somewhere in the game if I wanted more challenges to start to show up, and I was kind of stuck just because I had so many challenges I've had to skip because they're not possible yet, that I needed to find something that I could complete to unlock a couple more just for the chance to try again and try to make more progress. So I ended up just really trying on this death race to come up with something to maybe get a leg up on the race, and I actually ended up discovering a glitch I had never known about. But essentially, if I just ran the opposite direction and ran all the way down this area and then just randomly wipe out in this corner by the fence, it actually respawned me where I could then just barely sprint my way past the finish line goalpost and win the race, which was a huge victory. And it was inspiring to me because I knew that then in maybe some of the other death races, I could find random glitches if the pathway permits that could get me a leg up. It didn't really work out that way all of the time. However, on Park and Play, I actually was able to find a couple different routes that would let me get a leg up, and it was just a matter of pulling it off correctly. So I had to find a route that I kind of could drop down and quickly skip all of the checkpoints, which apparently don't matter in Death Race for Skate 3 for whatever reason. And honestly, it's so satisfying winning a death race on foot by just cheating and finding a shortcut along the way. Seriously, it was really cool. Okay, so around this part, we were somewhere around the 300,000 boards sold section, also known as Milestone 5, the final milestone before you hit 1 million boards. However, it's also the longest milestone, as somehow we have to manage to get 600,000 more boards by completing challenges without riding our skateboard, and we're already running out of possible challenges. Just to recap and get caught up to where we are, while we were able to get some of the death races done on foot, I'm pretty sure that Perilous Path and Rooftop Race are impossible, and same goes for probably Speed Thrills and maybe the Scenic Route as well, though I wanted to test those out some more. As far as Own the Lot, I don't think we're going to get too much progress in this category at all, which is kind of a big damper because there's some big skateboard rewards that you can get to get your brand to sell more boards and get close to hitting 1 million boards faster. But just a lot of these are like clearly impossible. So I think this category is pretty much going to be null and void. For the film category, it was kind of a little bit hit or miss, but just to go through the list, I'm pretty sure Parkside Entry Gap, Sign of Grinds, and Tunnel Blasting are all going to be impossible here as well. And then I started to try to knock out some of the contests where I could, because while they are challenging overall, there are a lot of tries to give it another go and find a way to cheese it, and sometimes you have teammates in some of the contests that can do all of the work for you. Caverton Carvathon was actually not that bad for a solo run. I just had to get more points than the other contestants, and I was able to kind of cheese doing some foot plants every single chance I got. Harsher Barge was another contest where, once again, I just kind of kept jumping into the bowl and landing either directly on the board without rolling around or doing a foot plant. Street contests overall are a little bit more complicated. Just in general, what it counts and doesn't count as points is tricky, though there are more team-oriented ones, so sometimes if you're lucky, you could just bank on your teammates that are AIs carrying the weight and pulling you through to win the tournament, and then you get all of the boards sold anyways. The further we got along in this challenge, the more and more unobtainable the 1 million boards overall started to feel. At this point, I was starting to get really worried because there weren't that many options left for challenges that we could actually get and make progress on to get from 600,000 boards to 1 million boards sold. And honestly, if this was the end, I was kind of okay with it. I mean, this took so long to even get this far, and the fact that I was able to even make it to the second to final milestone was pretty awesome. Matter of fact, when I started recording the audio for this very video, this was where I thought everything would wrap up, because I didn't think there was much more that I would be able to go beyond this point. While we weren't quite able to get the 1 million boards, but we did make decent progress. Overall, I think we were somewhere around the 86% range through the game before we hit the roadblock where I genuinely don't think it's possible to make any progress further. But hey, if anyone out there can figure it out, kudos to you. I feel kind of like an idiot, but I missed something that was right in front of me this whole time. When I was skating around, I passed by this location and it activated the spot called the Kink. I had to get 700 points to own the spot, and that would give me some more boards sold. And in general, the other own the spots that I've done were really easy. I just kind of sprinted to the foot plant and would get some boards done. But there weren't that many own the spots at all. And then I realized that I'd completely forgotten that in Skate 3, to get the list of all of the own the spot locations, you have to travel to the location first. And since I was just going through the menu, trying to knock out all of the challenges from there, all of these own the spot locations were just not there. So potentially I had been sleeping on a ton of boards that I could have made by just traveling to the location. So then the own the spot grind would begin, where I had to go through and find all of the own the spot locations, which honestly isn't too hard. You can just navigate through the online menus and then go offline, and then you're at the location. And then I went and did all of the tricks to own every single spot. Some of them were harder than others, but nonetheless, I did manage to do that. Now, despite the fact that I found like 18 new locations, it actually didn't really add up that much to the overall boards, and there's not a whole lot of locations, so we still were, of course, making progress, but it definitely wasn't enough to take us straight to the end here. but at least I was feeling like maybe I didn't do a deep enough dive into where we can get boards besides just the menu, and maybe I was missing more things that could be a big game changer. I decided to focus in on doing some of the pro challenges and wrap up the rest of the contests, and these things definitely helped, as these are worth the bigger amount of boards sold for completion, though they are more complex and much more time consuming. I thought I'd be finished with this video weeks ago, and here I was still going ahead and trying these specific things, because while they weren't easy on the first try, I knew that if I tried it enough, I probably could eventually get lucky enough to pull off a victory and win. The pro challenges are kind of interesting, and there are some that you just cannot complete at all, but the ones that I could follow through with and get past, like the 1-ups and the follow-alongs, did score quite a bit of boards, and getting a lot of the contests knocked out did chip away at a large portion of the boards we needed to sell. And at this point, after clearing those out, I was down to just the final 48,000 boards, but we were really desperately running out of any other objectives to do to get more boards. I actually figured if I could just beat the Dennis Bussenet's race, it would put me close enough to maybe get the last round of boards from the big Maloof Vert race, which is worth 40,000 boards, but as it turns out, I actually can't do it because it's DLC and also probably impossible. So I did eventually beat Dennis in this race, which was stupidly hard, where I had to like cut a certain corner at a specific time and just sprint and hope for the very best. Eventually I did end up winning, but I still had 36,000 boards to go and nothing challenge related that I could really do to fill in the gaps. I went back to Death Race to see what I could maybe pick up again and just try out those ones that I thought were impossible. And I did actually get lucky that if I tried Speed Thrills enough times, I could potentially, just maybe, get a fast enough time where I could win. Honestly, this was a little bit crazy. I had to run down the route at the beginning and then kind of position myself right up on these rocks, then do a perfect leap down that would tell the game that I was somewhere down at the bottom of the race, and then I would have to make a sprint from the bottom of the hill into this cave and wipe out in there, where it would then respawn me at the end. I did this so many times, still got last place. Still 20, 30, 40 seconds too slow. I kept trying over and over and over again, and just randomly at one point, the NPC skater who was racing here got stuck, and then I immediately went and hit him with my skateboard and made him wipe out, and then made a mad dash to the respawn point in the cave where I could wipe out and go to the end. And I sprinted in and I got 3rd place on the race. Fortunately, all you have to do is not be in last, and your teammate scores high enough to bring you enough points to win this race overall, and that added in a couple of more boards, but it did close the gap a little bit more in everything else we had left. I also did eventually go back and manage to win at Scenic Route, which is just really interesting because there were essentially 2 different shortcuts I had to trigger to stay in the lead and just make that without getting last place to win. Also, though I originally struggled really hard with Sign of the Grinds, I actually came up with a pretty easy strategy to pull this one off and make the gap with a foot plant, so this one was eventually beatable too. So in the same way that I was feeling a little bit down on the fact that I felt like I couldn't progress anymore, and then I discovered I needed to go and own all of the spot locations, I also realized that I could go back and kill all of the Hall of Meat locations that I did, which while they don't give an excessive amount of points, they do give you about the same amount of points for going through all of the Hall of Meats the first time. So the next step was to go through all of the Hall of Meats and go for the killing it version of it, which honestly was a little time consuming, but it wasn't all that impossible. Thorax Crunch is possible, but it's just kind of a pain, and I decided I would only do that one if I absolutely had to at the end. But I also realized that in this process, I can go back and kill other challenges as well. Specifically, you could go back and get a faster time in Death Race, or you can get a higher score in Own the Spot. Death Race likely wasn't happening because I was already running on foot and I had to come up with some crazy ways to even pull off getting in 3rd place, so I've zeroed in on trying to find a way to get even higher scores on Own the Spot to get the extra reward and sell more boards on the locations that I had already completed. Both of these together were incredibly time consuming and very meticulous, and it was very frustrating when I would just try on one of them just to fail over and over, or get really close and still not have enough points. And then some of the times it felt like I was doing tricks and the game wouldn't even register my tricks or give me my points for them. So that was also incredibly frustrating. But nonetheless, finally, after years in the making of this video, but specifically many many hours of playing Skate 3 without skateboarding around, we managed to pull it off and hit the 1 million board mark, completing the game, getting the final achievement, getting the whole little monster brand deal competition bonus post-game thing unlocked, and it was kind of a wild experience. In a way, I didn't think this would ever be possible. I knew from the beginning when I started testing this on one account before we started to really go in and document everything and record things on another account, that if we were to make this a video, chances are it would be one of our failed challenges where we just document the journey and how close we got. But the fact that in the last arc of doing this, we managed to actually pull this off, it was completely unexpected and crazy, and I am so happy I was able to do this and not have to do this again. Hey, it gave me something to do until Skate 4 comes out, but now Skate 2 is backwards compatible, which it wasn't at the beginning of working on this video, so I can play the superior Skate, don't tell anyone I said that, at least until Skate 4 comes out, and maybe Skate 4 will actually be good. We'll have to see about that. If you like this video though, make sure you subscribe with notifications on. You can follow me on Twitter at Rocket Elijah, and you follow Luke also, who edits these videos and helps me with literally everything. He co-runs his channel at Rocket Sloth Luke. That's it for today. We'll see you guys next time with a brand new video.